Hello there and welcome to Inside the Investigation. I'm KXAN's Director of Investigations and Innovation, Josh Hinkle, and today I am joined by our Senior Investigative Producer, David Barrera. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So we're talking about a project that we launched all the way back in 2017. It was called Fallen. If you are joining us right now from our KXAN Plus app, you may have just watched Fallen because we just aired that docuseries. If you're watching on KXAN.com, you can watch the Fallen docuseries by going to the link below this video. The reason we are revisiting this is because it's been 8 years since we put this docuseries together. We actually recorded it from right here at the Texas Peace Officer Memorial, where the list of fallen officers since the beginning of Texas is all listed. We specifically focused on officers that were killed by gunfire since 2000 all the way to then 2017. And at that point, in that time period, there were 79 officers who had been killed by gunfire. And many of the shooters involved in those incidents had criminal or violent pasts, and they also had what we saw was a history of mental illness. 8 years later, that number 79 has risen to at least 126. And a lot of that is surrounding what we have seen with gun violence and policing, which continue to be major political topics in America and here in Texas. This project was actually sparked by the 2016 ambush killing of 5 Dallas police officers that you may remember. An Army veteran during a protest named Micah Xavier Johnson. He was 25. He actually wounded others before police killed him with a remote-controlled bomb. That case was highly publicized, but most of the cases that we started focusing on we found weren't so publicized, and so we really had to start doing some digging. The case that really became the focus of this project was the 2014 death of Little River Academy police chief. He was at the home of his actual killer when he was shot on the front porch after a road rage incident. And so that's where we really kind of started being able to tell the story behind this docuseries. But it wasn't easy. You really had to do some digging to find some of that evidence, right?
Right. So the main thing you'll see in the documentary is video footage and documentation of the case you just mentioned in Little River Academy. And that small town is in Bell County, Texas. And so what we did was we went to the Bell County District Attorney's office to get the records from them, and we requested records of all the evidence that they had collected in preparation for the trial of David Reisner. And what we got back was 12 CDs full of video and documents from the case. So it was a huge amount of records, and we relied on that a lot to tell the story. Beyond that, we dug into the cases of dozens of other people who had been accused, charged, or found to have killed police officers by shooting them over a number of years. And we looked into their criminal histories, their personal histories, work histories, we gathered court records, we spoke to people involved with those cases in some instances. And so it was a large amount of information we gathered on that. Then on top of that, you'll also see interviews with legal experts, mental health experts, and law enforcement experts, government officials too. So it was a large record gathering and interview effort, and that's what composes the documentary.
And I will point out that the Society of Professional Journalists actually honored this with a national award. It's Sigma Delta Chi Award for Best Documentary in 2018. And one of the things I remember the judges told us was that the videos and the records that we were able to compile for this, while they were very graphic and sometimes startling to look at, they were necessary to really tell people exactly what was happening and just how alarming this should be for the state of Texas and for America. And I think graphic is a good way to describe this because it was difficult to watch some of those videos. Our colleagues, our former colleagues, Shannon Wolfson and Ben Freeberg, they worked with us on this. Ben was the photojournalist, and some of these body camera videos and dash camera videos were just very violent and gruesome to see. And when you're the photojournalist and you're in the edit bay for hours and hours on end, having to rewatch and figure out what is just enough to let our viewers see the reality of the situation without going overboard to possibly upset the families or show too much graphic content, that can be really jarring. I remember Ben had to take a break from editing for a couple of weeks after that because he just needed to kind of reset his mind. And that's something he doesn't mind us sharing. He's talked about it before, but I mean, you probably had some similar experience when you were going through a lot of those records as well.
Yeah, it's just a difficult thing to handle, but it was an important topic. It was at the front of everyone's mind at the time, and remains that way because this is an issue that's ongoing. We all saw the videos, and on top of that, we interviewed Constable Prado, and that was a very emotional one because he was the first responder at the Little River Academy police chief's death scene, and it still haunts him to this day.
Yeah, and you saw him in some of those body camera and dash camera videos also really trying to, even this police chief was his friend, trying to revive him, trying to take into account what had just happened, and also make sure that the suspect, which was a man named David Reisner at the time, was subdued and taken into custody. Reisner was a former police officer himself and served as a civilian contractor in Iraq, where his wife told detectives in the records that we were able to obtain that his compound was bombed and he actually sustained several concussions. He came back a different man, she told the detectives. He had run-ins with law enforcement. Experts actually testified at his trial that he had a traumatic brain injury and PTSD. We do know that he was convicted of that. What ended up happening in his case, and where is he today?
So there's not a lot to add to his case. He ultimately took a plea deal for life in prison without parole. He was sent to prison. He didn't appeal his case. That's one of the reasons why we were able to get so many records. But he is 68 now. He's in a prison in East Texas, and there he will remain.
Well, in addition to that case and the others that we documented, we also explored several solutions with this project. How could the state of Texas or local law enforcement agencies really start to combat some of the problems that we were finding? And as I mentioned, many of these cases involved mental illness, so that's where a lot of the focus on solutions happened. One of the things we looked at was something that had existed already in Texas since 2008, when Governor Rick Perry had an executive order for something called Blue Alerts. Several states have these things. Like I said, Texas has had them since 2008. But while we were putting the documentary together, state lawmakers here at the Capitol, which is just a few feet away from us right now, they actually passed Senate Bill 1138, which made Blue Alerts a permanent part of state law. It also made the system go under the Texas Department of Public Safety, DPS. And essentially what Blue Alerts do, it's kind of like an Amber Alert or a Silver Alert, if you're familiar with those, going off on your phone. They speed up catching people who kill or seriously wound police officers. The public, essentially receives information about a suspect, like texts. You could also see them on some of those flashing signs that are on the highways, just alerts in general. We have found that there have been occasional problems over the years since we first did this documentary with Blue Alerts. You might remember millions of people, in fact, across the state got an alert recently at 5 a.m., which is typically outside the time that you would get a Blue Alert. A police chief in Memphis, which is 6 hours away from where we are right now in the Panhandle, was actually shot. And the thing is you can opt out of these Blue Alerts. But some say that having so many alerts these days on your cell phones, from weather alerts to everything else, it can cause message fatigue. So that's some of the problems that we've kind of covered a little bit with Blue Alerts since then. Recently, you may also remember in Austin, we had a shooting rampage. There was some criticism because no alert went out after 2 officers in Austin here were injured. That was because it requires confirmation of a suspect's identity, and police didn't have that at the time when it would have been feasible to send out these blue alerts. So I think it's a system that they're always evaluating and figuring out how we can get better with it, but definitely it has helped increase awareness of what's happening with the police officers' death, or if they've been wounded, and how the public can be involved when it comes to a suspect. KXAN was another thing that we looked at. This was a system, a software system, and a shared network to essentially improve officer communications and get data fast. As of 2017, when we did this project, more than 800 courts and police agencies in 17 different states used KXAN. It is Texas-based. A lot of those agencies were in Texas, but over the years, shortly after that, actually, it started struggling financially, and it exchanged hands to a different company. Do you have any other updates on that?
Yeah, so KXAN, like you said, it was this program that was billing itself as some of the best technology for police officers to be able to obtain information, sort of like a CAD system that they could type in a license plate or other information and get stuff, pertinent information about suspects or people that they may be interacting with, to find out if they may be dangerous or have some sort of a mental health issue in the past. They were across many states. You said 17, with 800 different agencies using them. The company, after our report aired, was acquired by another entity that does similar work, and my understanding is that they were sort of integrated into that platform. So KXAN doesn't exist as it did when we did our report, but it appears their work went merged into another platform.
Something that started here in Texas. It was kind of based on an incident that had happened with a state trooper here. The wife of that state trooper was actually involved in kind of the first iteration of KXAN, but we do know it exists still in some form today across America. Another solution we looked at was crisis intervention training. As you might remember, we followed around the Austin Police Department, where they had mental health officers that were going out to respond to calls where there might be a person experiencing some type of mental health crisis. The benefit of having a mental health officer is that they had specific training in trying to de-escalate a situation, so it didn't get to the point where it could be dangerous for either the person that was having the crisis, or for the public, or for police officers. And we've seen since then that many law enforcement agencies have implemented some type of crisis intervention training. Unfortunately, we do know that mental illness is something that is just becoming more and more prevalent with the criminal justice system in general. One of the big focuses that David and I have looked at over the years since that project is how it plays out once someone is arrested and they go to jail and then they're needing to stand trial. Mental competency is really kind of that focus. This is a big issue here in the state of Texas because there is a long wait list for people to get into a state hospital to have a bed so they can have their competency restored, so they can get that treatment, so that they can come back to the court and be competent enough to stand trial and take part in their defense. It has gotten better over the years. The state has implemented a number of solutions to try to speed up that wait list and get more people into a state hospital bed, or another alternative, because state hospital beds aren't the only place that competency restoration can happen. But what does it look like right now? I know that it's still something that the state still struggles with.
Yeah, so if you're a person with a mental health issue, or you experience a mental health crisis, and you end up getting arrested, that can lead to a whole new set of problems because of the wait list you just described. We've reported on this for years since then. So I looked up the numbers. I'm going to check on my notes here. So the wait list has had at different times hundreds of people. The last time they put the wait list online was in April. So I checked the numbers from then. There were a total of 1,700 people waiting, with an average time for the maximum security facility being 250 days. That's a lot. They're still trying really hard to lower it, but that's actually a substantial improvement from where it was a few years earlier than that. In late 2022 and early 2023, there were more than 2,500 people waiting on the list, and there was a point where the wait for one of those maximum security beds was up to an average of 800 days. So that time is spent, the people who are mentally ill, they need, to be restored mentally. They're waiting in jail, and most often the jails are not equipped, and it's to do that, to help them, and it's not a mental health facility. So it's a serious problem that the state has been trying to tackle for years, but we have seen an improvement.
A lot of this comes back to there wasn't a lot of great tracking of the data, and that's part of where our work is focused, is making sure that the state is doing a better job with that. We've tried to hold them accountable with that. The Health and Human Services Commission, lawmakers have gotten involved. Some of these bills are difficult to get passed, especially when there's so many big topics here at the Capitol. One of the biggest ones was this past legislative session. Sarah Eckhart, a senator here from Austin, tried to get a study passed to where we could really take a hyper-focused look at the reality of state hospital beds and what it was going to take for the state to get ahead of that. It didn't pass, but we know that she will continue working in that realm, as many lawmakers will. And of course, our work will continue also because we know it's an important topic for Texans and also for the work that we're doing. So thank you for being with me today to talk about all this stuff.
Thanks for having me.
We will continue doing these from the vault updates on past projects that we really want to let you know where they've gone each month as part of our Inside the Investigations series. You can check our Inside the Investigations videos like this one that are normally hosted by our colleague Kelly Wiley every week on the KXAN Plus app on your smart TV. You can also get it at KXAN.com each week. And we have an audio version that comes out each Saturday on your favorite podcast platform. Just search for KXAN Investigates. All right, I'm Josh Hinkle, and for David Barrere, thank you so much. Have a great weekend.